Hello and welcome to the first episode of Talking Tottenham with myself, Ryan Taylor and Alasdair Gold. Talking Tottenham is sponsored by NordVPN. Ali, how are you doing?
I'm good. Good to be back on the pod, and there's been a lot of people kind of wondering where we've been. So here we are. We're back, and good to have you on, the newcomer to the pod. Tell people a bit about yourself. They might not know who you are.
So I wanted to do a little nod to Guesty. I didn't know Rob very well, but what I do know is he was very well respected amongst Tottenham fans, and yourself and Rob had a great thing going on with the Golden Guest podcast. So I think it's a little bit of a difficult one for me, stepping into Rob's shoes, so to speak, because you've done a fantastic job. I'm sure fans will probably be keen to know what Guesty's up to as well, if you've got any kind of update.
Well, people know Guesty liked his holidays. So essentially what he did when he left was he just had one giant holiday and has been pretty much anywhere around the world you care to mention. Guesty has been there in the last 3 months or so. He's doing fine. I think he's just come back to the UK now as well. So he's kind of looking to the next chapter of what comes for him. Obviously, did the pod for him for a good few years. But I guess as with football, things change and people move on to different things. And kind of the podcast, it couldn't lie dormant. One day Guesty may, join us again as a trio or something in the future. But certainly for now, we're going to bring hopefully a lot of the same stuff, chatting about Spurs, sharing the pain of Spurs, which is always the case as well. And you're kind of used to a bit of pain yourself anyway, aren't you, right now with your football club?
Yes, unfortunately, as a Liverpool fan, it's not been the best season so far. I think a lot of people actually think I'm an Arsenal fan. At this moment in time, though, it's been very difficult. Just going back to your point, you asked me to explain a little bit about myself for those that don't know me. So I've worked on the Sunday Mirror for the past 2 years. So I've covered a fair bit of Tottenham. Was in Bodo for the semi-final, went to Frankfurt as well. Done a lot of the home matches on the long winding road to Bilbao. But yeah, obviously we're working together now, which is great. And I'd like to bring a lot of energy to this pod in the sense that you're on the ground covering Spurs home and away, whereas I sort of dip in and out. I do the odd game here and there. I've got a couple of games coming up with Fulham on Saturday and Brentford as well the following week. But I kind of take the view from the outside looking in, whereas you're the man that's behind the scenes and seeing it all unfold. And obviously earlier in the season when you had your lovely trip across the globe, I got a taste firsthand of what it's like to cover Spurs, and it was a whirlwind couple of days. We done Everton, Monaco, and Newcastle away, and it was just so Jekyll and Hyde that it really did kind of hammer home what a crazy experience it is when you're covering Spurs, and that's something that I can't believe you've done for so long, because it's just absolutely bonkers at times. But yeah, looking forward to this podcast, and obviously it's been quite a busy week for yourself over in France at the Parc des Princes for the PSG game, which was a positive performance, not a positive result. But if you were to say before the game that Spurs would score 3 goals and come away with no points, I think fans would be just tying into what we just said there. But it's all a bit perplexing. What did you make of the game?
Honestly, it was absolute chaos from about 55 minutes on. Before that, it was actually a really professional kind of performance from Spurs. The only real kind of way through that PSG managed to make was an incredible Vitinha shot into the top corner. It's like you can't really... I mean, yes, you could have got a bit closer to him, but my word, what a finish and what a player. Paris is interesting. Very interesting. I kind of expected to go into that stadium getting, Marseille vibes, Galatasaray vibes, this incredibly hostile atmosphere. But actually, it wasn't really. Maybe that was because of how Spurs played in the first half, perhaps. It didn't feel quite like that. It reminded me a little bit of when Spurs played in Barcelona, that almost like, how do I say this? That's really disrespectful to all PSG fans, which is not the intention, but more not a sing when they're winning, but they kind of want to be entertained rather than go like this loud roar, this constant noise. It felt more like that. So when PSG started to get into their groove in the second half, with Spurs helping them a fair bit as well, then the crowd started to get behind them. But I wouldn't say it was the most intimidating atmosphere from the off for Spurs, which I think probably helped them settle a little bit into their game plan, which it was a very different game plan as well. What did you make of that formation?
Well, I remember seeing the lineup. Obviously, I was actually at Arsenal Bayern, but when I saw the lineup, I was trying to sort of put together how it was going to look on paper, because I think you touched upon it in one of your tweets that UEFA sometimes have players playing in different positions. But I like the sort of strike force in the sense of a traditional sort of two up top with a packed midfield. I would say it was quite left field from Frank. I know he's a manager that during his time at Brentford could play multiple systems, whether it be back threes, back fours. But I really liked the dynamic kind of energy that Spurs had in midfield, and I think that's something at times they've missed. I know that the Bentancur sort of pivot has been a topic of debate at various points, but I love the energy of Sarr, Bergvall, Gray, real sort of front foot and real belief in those young players. And ultimately, when they're given a platform to perform, we can see what they're capable of. So do you think that's a blueprint that Spurs could use moving forward, or do you think it was just tailor-made for playing PSG, a team that are going to dominate the ball?
I feel probably for this game. I think he called the Super Cup game, he called it a special operation, the way they set up tactically. And I feel like this was again that. And I don't think that's not to say, and we're going to talk about, especially the two teenagers. I do think he's now realised he can use the two of them together, which is going to be great. But I do think it was a specially kind of formulated plan for PSG. What's quite interesting, you brought up about the UEFA team sheets. They can be some wild and wacky formations. Yeah. And I always in the past just went, oh, UEFA, what have they done now? But I found out, I think it was towards the end of last season, that actually that's each club's officials gives that formation to UEFA. So Spurs there, UEFA's team sheet, had Archie Gray as one of, I think he was the right-sided centre-back in a back three. So that is actually Spurs, like, they're like, kind of like some kind of evil plan, to just throw everyone off. And we kind of know now, just wait until the kickoff, and we actually know what the formation is. And it was like about three formations in one. It was quite a fluid thing, because at times it was a diamond with either Gray or Bergvall at the tip of it. Sometimes it actually became morphed into a 4-3-3 with Sarr pushing up on the right of the front three. It was a weird. And at some points you could almost, it was almost like a 4-2-2-2. I was trying to get my numbers right there. It was a really kind of, it was an interesting formation. And I actually think had Gray and Bergvall not tired, which they naturally would, because neither of them have played a lot of football in the last month or so, I think the plan probably would have worked into the second half as well. And maybe that's on Thomas Frank for not making his changes earlier and realising that those two were going to tire. And obviously not helped by Christian Romero having a bit of a stinker in the second half. Yeah. But what did you make of that first goal, the opening goal from Spurs?
The one that Spurs scored?
Yeah, the Richarlison one in 35 minutes in.
It's strange because it's not really the type of goal that I would associate with Spurs. I think a lot of the good things that they've done under Frank, in a sense, outside of the set pieces, is sort of attacking the box. And again, touching on the fact that, we basically saw a partnership effectively up top. I think Richarlison is a player that I would like to see score more goals like that, because he can be a pest in the 6-yard box. But I think a lot of the time he's more interested in scrapping with the opposition defenders. And I think it was a really sort of a display of clever striker attacking instinct, really, from Kolo Muani. The way he kind of anticipated some of those balls in the box and how they bounced, even for the second goal as well. So I don't know. I think this is one of them games that's probably actually given Frank more food for thought he expected, because it was kind of an experiment that actually brought so many positives, as opposed to sort of just being a one-off game plan to try and, disrupt PSG. So I'm intrigued to hear what you think about, is it likely that we could see Kolo Muani and Richarlison start more regularly together, both kind of in a central strike partnership?
Yeah, maybe. I think it's definitely going to be an option now going forward for games, because they did link up really well, and that was
Yeah.
exactly that first goal showed it. I mean, it was beautiful link up with Bergvall and Gray, and they tried that a little bit earlier. Bergvall, he'd done a backheeled kind of flick into Gray's path, and I can't remember what it led to. It didn't lead to a goal. I think a defender cut out Gray's cross, but this time obviously Gray stands it up perfectly to the back post, and it's quite a really good awareness from Muani,
Yeah.
Kolo Muani. A lot of strikers would have tried to head that in the near post, but he's seen Richarlison. And this is the thing, Richarlison's getting a bit of stick right now because his performances haven't been great, but he's got 3 goals in 3 matches. It's like really weird kind of, he is getting into the right areas at the right time. So, yeah, I think as a pairing, I can see it in certain games. And the beauty, I guess, of both players is they can both play on the wing at a push as well. You can definitely notice that in Kolo Muani's play. I know we'll talk about him a little bit more depth in a minute, but I mean, actually, probably now's a good time to talk about him.
Yeah.
Do you see him as a kind of a normal all-out striker? Because his goals record in recent years on loans, especially at Juventus and previously at Frankfurt as well, has been really good. Do you see him as an all-out striker, or do you see him as a winger, or do you see him as some kind of weird hybrid?
I think he's an out-and-out 9, to be honest. Obviously, he's slightly different probably to Richarlison and Dom Solanke, in the sense that he's more of kind of a typical off-the-shoulder, shots-off kind of striker, as opposed to someone who's going to play with their back to goal, although he can do that as well. But I really like him. I mean, his record at Juve when he went on loan in January, I believe, was pretty good to start with. He hit the ground running, and he scored goals really wherever he's gone. I know the PSG move didn't work out. Obviously, it was a big fee, but at Eintracht, he was one of the best young strikers in Europe. I was surprised at the fee when it happened, but I wasn't surprised that PSG signed him, because it was clear he had great potential. And at the World Cup as well, obviously, he had that famous shot that was saved by Martinez at the death. But for me, looking at that's what I feel is really strong about Kolo Muani, is that he always wants to sort of go in behind and get shots off. He's lively. I don't think many central defenders would like playing against that kind of centre forward that just wants to stretch you. And, he's sharp. He is. And I do think, when you consider that he suffered a fractured jaw, I think, it was quite a brave performance, really, going back to, the team that technically he might not even be allowed to play against, really. But I would stick with him. And I think also an interesting element with both Richarlison and Kolo Muani is that they've both got points to prove ahead of the World Cup. They both want to go. Richarlison obviously was excellent in Qatar with Brazil, but he hasn't played recently for Brazil, and they've got a lot of top forward options. And Kolo Muani finds himself in a similar boat. He's liked by Deschamps, but Mateta's come in and scored goals for France as well. We've got Ekitike as well. So it's really interesting, but I think that plays into Spurs' hands on both fronts there with Kolo Muani. What about you?
Yeah, 100%. I think you're spot on there. There's nothing like a World Cup year, is there, to kind of drive up performances. And what I like about Kolo Muani is that it's the unpredictability of what he might do. And that's, I think defenders don't really know how, like you say, he can be an off the shoulder striker and run in behind. But because I think of that ability to also play on the wing, he's very happy with the ball at his feet driving at a defender.
Yeah.
And it just puts them on the back foot. But he's also good in the air. So he's kind of like a bit of a triple threat as a striker. And you're spot on. He is different to the other options. And I feel like a couple of nights ago in Paris was probably the Kolo Muani Spurs thought they were signing. That's the one. And I mean, I know it's been tough for him. He's had no preseason. He's had to kind of come back into things. Then he had a dead leg, which just became something far more kind of like worrying as well for him. And then, like you say, just called up for the France squad thinking, yes. And then he fractures his jaw with a big old Harry Maguire collision. I think if they can keep harnessing this version of Kolo Muani, you're going to want him starting almost every game because he has. That was talking about the unpredictability. If anyone should know him, PSG defenders should know him, but yet they couldn't contain him. 2 goals, 1 assist, and actually Vitinho spoke about him in the mix zone after the game, and he said, just sometimes it can be anything that stops the player being able to perform as a club. It can be context, it could be things going on that you're not even aware of. And he said, but he's not only a great player, but he's a really great guy as well. And he's so happy for him that he's succeeding at Spurs now. These are the first 2 goals. Hopefully it opens the door now to a bit of a deluge, because we know, especially in this, team that has struggled a bit to create chances, if you can get a striker that can kind of almost create his own as well, it's only naturally going to up the chances. It's going to create space for others. He can assist for others. It could be kind of the little key into the lock that, unlocks Spurs, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, I certainly noticed in the Copenhagen game, I know, albeit it's weaker opposition, but the movement was there. The finishing wasn't. But you saw with the conviction of that second finish from Kolo Muani that he might be a confidence player. Once that first one's gone in, you look how sort of he didn't think twice about that little movement and that finish for the second goal. And I like that. I think he's a player that, most strikers are confidence players. We've seen that with Richarlison recently. But I do think I totally agree that once, now these first goals have gone in, that the rest could follow. And it's a great time for him to hit form as well. Obviously, we'll touch on Dom Solanke, but he has been such a big miss for Spurs. It really hasn't probably been spoken about enough because he's such a focal point for them. But they've also missed someone that can stick the ball away. But just going back to your initial point about the first goal, obviously Gray was involved. I'm so pleased to see Archie have a night like that, because it's been such a tough season for him. And I haven't really been able to put my finger on why he hasn't sort of had as many opportunities as he probably would have liked. So I was at the opening day of the season game against Burnley, and that looked like a real sort of young trio for Spurs to sort of build around, but it just hasn't quite happened. He had that calf injury in Monaco that ended up keeping him out for a bit longer than anticipated. But should Gray be a regular starter for Spurs, Ali, do you feel?
Anyone that's listened to the pod knows I am a huge Archie Gray fan. I just think he's got such... I know people don't like sometimes the word a ceiling or potential, whatever that, but he has got everything as a midfielder. And I think we saw it, the kind of shades of it in the pre-season. I think it was a game against Newcastle. He was brilliant in that game. And then, Burnley, I think he really grew into the game. And I think he was set to start against Monaco, the way Thomas Frank was speaking in recent days, only to get that calf injury. So I think it's just been really unfortunate for him that, of course, he came into Spurs, £40 million midfielder, one of the top midfield talents, at that age. Everyone remembers the FA Cup performance against Chelsea for Leeds, the calling card kind of performance. But even for them, he was playing a lot of right back in the season before they they got to the playoffs, didn't they? And then didn't get up that season. And then he comes to Spurs as this much heralded young midfielder and plays most of the season as a centre-back. And he's never even played there before. No. And the poor kid, I just felt so sorry for him. In one respect, he's getting a lot of minutes and he'll got an incredible education from last season. But still, even just in training sessions at Hotspur Way, he's not working with the coaches in the midfield. He's working with Matthew Wells, the defensive coach, as part of a back four or whatever. So it's kind of almost stunted his development just for a season or so. And now he spoke about it after the game in the mix zone about how he's getting this really great individual coaching now from the coach. They're really working a lot of his game. And for me, I just want to see more of him in a pitch. It might just be a personal thing, but I'm more interested in the lineup when I see Archie Gray's name in it. I want to see how he does. And I think he's got this great friendship on and off the pitch with Lucas Bergvall. And I think that you saw that some of the interplay last night, especially for the first goal. And actually the second goal as well. Gray gets into a great position, gets a flick onto Richarlison's header. I think it's Zaire Emery heads it against the crossbar, and that bounces out for Kolo Muani to score. And he, in the game at Boda as well in the Champions League, that's Archie Gray up at the far end of the pitch, forcing the issue. Richarlison scores. So he's got this terrific all-round ability to be He can play as an anchor man. He can play as an 8 going up and down the pitch.
Yeah.
He's at times early on in the game, he was a 10 last night. He was right at the tip of that midfield diamond. So I spoke about it in my talking points this week about I really hope that this is Thomas Frank's Pochettino moment. Pochettino had the game 2014 in November when Harry Kane scored the winner. Aston Villa, that's it. And it looked like he was dead and buried, turned to his coaching staff and said, I think we need to pack our bags. We're heading off, kind of thing. We're done. And it all changed. And in that moment, he went, right, I'm not doing it your way. I'm not playing these older players. I'm not going for these like little clicks or whatever. I'm going to go for the younger players. The younger players are going to be the future of this team. And I'm not saying there's clicks or disruptive older players at Spurs, because that doesn't seem to be the case nowadays. But there definitely is some incredible young players. And when you've got Gray and Bergvall and Sarr as well, use them. Don't use this double pivot of Bentancur, Paulinho, which, yes, in some games it will help you. But please never, ever use that at home, especially. There is no need to use the two of them who are not runners. They've not got that. I mean, I'd like to see, maybe we'll see it against Fulham, maybe Paulinho at the base of that midfield and allow the younger ones to run on would be great. But I feel like, it shouldn't be the both of them. It should be one of them. So, you've got these young players like Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall. Use them. Just let them fly, as it were, No,
that's how it should be. I think, we know Spurs have put a lot of emphasis on investing in young players. So, why are they not deemed ready to be regular starters? I think, Lucas Bergvall showed last year. He come from the Swedish league, which, with all due respect, is not a league that naturally would translate to a top 5 domestic league with an instant hit rate. But he was brilliant. And very, like what you said there, I think there's so many positives to his character, his ability, his energy. So I do find it incredibly frustrating. And he doesn't strike me as someone that's going to go banging on Thomas Frank's door. So hopefully this is the start of a snowball effect for him, because it's been a difficult season so far and the platform is there. Just moving into Fulham, Ali, see, unfortunately, we've got to revisit those awful Premier League home struggles. I was absolutely baffled to discover just yesterday that only Wolves have taken less points at home in the top flight than Spurs, which is crazy, really, given that this incredible stadium was effectively looking like it was going to hopefully become a fortress for Spurs. So just on the game, obviously Fulham are having a little bit of a strange season themselves, really. They've picked up a recent win against Sunderland, but actually they're sort of down the bottom of the table when in recent seasons they've been knocking on the door for Europe. So do you think Thomas Frank should kind of stick with the crux of that side that showed so many positives in Paris, or do you think it's maybe time for a bit of a freshen up, maybe?
I think naturally, to people's annoyance, I think he will have to change certain elements of it, only because of how quickly the next game has come onto this one. And you've already, straight after that, you've got Newcastle away on the Tuesday night as well. So I think there will be some changes. I'm really, really hoping that we do get to see Gray and Bergvall continue together. I mean, if you're going to play like that against the European champions, players like Vitinha, with no disrespect to Fulham, you should be okay to play against Fulham. To be fair, that's pretty much what Thomas Frank said in his press conference last night. My gut instinct tells me that he might look at Archie Gray and say, well, these are the first minutes you've played in a month. It probably might be a risk to throw you straight back in again 3 days later at the start and play an hour or so. So it might be that we see him come on later in the game, and maybe Bergvall, he was kind of starting to get a little bit more regular minutes before the concussion, on and off a little bit. But I would imagine Paulinho comes in, maybe Bentancur gets a rest. I'm hoping. There's nothing against Bentancur, but I just don't want to see the two of them together.
He has been poor, I think, recently, and obviously red card on international duty. He's looked a little bit leggy at times, which is understandable because he's played a huge amount of minutes. But I agree with you. I think it's time for a little bit of a shake-up.
Would you put Xavi in there?
I think Xavi needs to play. I think I've seen positives from him in sort of recent weeks. It's hard because I think momentum is always so key for players. You need rhythm. You can't be in and out of the side and expect to sort of hit form. So it's difficult because there is so many competition for places. But I think he does have something I'm seeing something at times that, you know, he's a top player really to be a Netherlands international, play for RB Leipzig in the Champions League regularly. I think there's a reason that Spurs have seen enough in him to put this money on the table. So I think use him. I think I agree with what you said about some of the younger players. I think it's time to sort of freshen the team up now. We've seen so much sort of inconsistency in Spurs this season. And the fact that, you know, if you were to take a stab at the starting 11 and you still sort of have no real clue what Frank's going to do, I think that's a problem, really. But I do think it's time just to bring it a few new players in. I think Brennan Johnson, I mean, I know he's not universally, well, he should be universally popular because he scored the most important goal in the club's history. But I do understand that amongst the fan base, there's quite a lot of frustration at, you know, some of his performances and his lack of consistency. But he scores goals at the end of the day. And I think, you know, he's got a point to prove. He's got pace. So I wouldn't mind seeing him come in. Kudus I found frustrating as well, to be honest. But just going to the back, obviously Romero is suspended, which, you know, could be a problem. But obviously on the basis of his performance in midweek, he wasn't at the top of his game. Different proposition probably against Raul Jimenez. Do you see that being a straight swap maybe for Danso, or do you think we might see something different? I don't know.
Well, Archie Gray. Can you imagine after all of that? Yeah, I think it'll be Danso.
You just don't know with Frank.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, plenty. I forgot about him playing there. Yeah, no, I think it'll be Danso. I'd imagine he slots in. I think probably your Doggy comes in as well, and then one of Spencer Porro on the right. I think what I'd probably like them to go with, I think probably Paulinho at the base of a midfield with Bergvall and either Gray or Sarr. And then I would probably, for this game, play Xavi on the left and have Koulibaly through the middle and Kudus on the right. And then maybe have Johnson or Odegaard plays against Newcastle. But I could probably imagine him bringing back in Odegaard. I do feel sorry for Xavi. He's gone back to his old side, probably thinking, I'm going to come on, I'm going to show them. No, mate, you're going to come on for the last 4 minutes or so and someone's going to smash you in the face. It's like a really unfortunate return to Paris.
Got one from Declan Rice as well on Sunday, didn't he? So it's been
Yeah, he's been battered, hasn't he? But,
he has, unfortunately.
And all after scoring a really nice goal for the Netherlands as well. You'd think kind of that would lead to something. And so did Brennan Johnson. Brennan Johnson scored a wonderful goal for Wales and pretty much has had no kind of reward for that. There's a few options up there, but it's about getting the right blend. I do feel, this is my thing with Thomas Frank, this was the first occasion in a little while he's picked a starting 11, and while it was a bit strange, you could kind of see straight off, I get why you've done that. Whereas I think there's been quite a few games recently where he's had to adapt and change the 11 as the game's gone on because it wasn't the right starting 11. And I think that's the key for him, is you said it kind of there. It's like, I don't think there's a set 11 yet in his head. And he needs to find that, because the sooner he can get to that, the quicker he'll be winning games rather than, was it only 3 and 12 right now?
Yeah. I think I totally agree with what you're saying there. The only kind of problem I see with that, even though I sort of made the point, is that if you were to pick a Tottenham 11 right now, you're basing it off what Frank has utilised in his sort of first X amount of games. And unfortunately, it probably would have the likes of Paulinho and Bentancur in the pivot and maybe Spence at left back. But I think Udogie is, in my view, not an upgrade, so to speak, but just having a left-footed left back makes such a difference in attacking and defensive sense. So you're right, he needs to get to sort of cut through all the kind of rotation that we've seen and try and establish a youthful team that's capable of getting results. I think there's so much. I always focus on the energy I see with Spurs in midfield. I think that, to me, is what's so positive about this squad. I think there's real potential there for, if some of these players were playing for the likes of, Brighton or Bournemouth, Spurs would be in for them. The likes of Gray, Bergvall. So I think it's important that Thomas Frank sort of utilises that and pushes on with that young nucleus and see what can be achieved. Just before we go, Ali, maybe a quick little prediction from yourself. Sorry to put the gun to your head.
I don't like predictions because I'm pretty much 99% wrong on the score prediction. I think it's a must-win. I really think it is. I would like to see them not concede any goals after conceding 9 in the last 2, 11 in the last 3. So I'm going to go out of hope for a clean sheet. I'm going to go for a 2-0 and get themselves back on track at home. That would be absolutely what the doctor ordered, and not Dr. Tottenham for a change.
We need a straightforward evening tomorrow, particularly if I'm doing the print side of things. I'm going to go for a cagey 1-0 Spurs, though.
Well, I don't want cagey 1-0.
I don't think anyone does, but I don't see Fulham as a side that score many goals, and I know Tottenham don't keep many clean sheets either, but I just think it's a bit of a dull game on paper, with all due respect to both teams. I think we need a bit of excitement, so hopefully we do get that. But this has been the first episode of Talking Tottenham. Ali, it's been a pleasure to join you, and we'll be back again soon.